Julie Handy, especially.
Okay, Kristen, are you good to?
Yeah, I'm ready to begin.
Started? Great.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to our virtual session here. We're going to begin, to make sure you're in the right place, this is the session on cultural and natural technical session. Sorry, I'm getting a little echo. And we're going to begin with going through some summary slides that are from all of our presenters, and with a brief introduction of each of our presenters that prepared their presentations, and then we'll go into the discussion. We're joined today by Mr. Shane Anton, and he's going to share some of his experiences with us. And I'm going to turn this over real quick to Zoe to go through the housekeeping, and then we'll sort of go through the steps here.
Awesome. Hopefully we're into this NMFWA meeting enough that we all know to keep our mics muted. As we get into, after these summary slides, we're going to open it up for questions. If you have a question for our panelists, please use the Pathable platform for this session, that chat box, to submit your questions. And let's see, the recording is this meeting is being recorded and will be available at a later date. And the video the summary slides have video with some sound, which tend to be a little bit quieter than our normal mics. So if you just want to turn up your speakers just a little bit for these summary slides, I think that'll probably be a good idea. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Kristen.
Okay, so we'll kick this off with the first presentation is from Ms. Kara Coates. Kara Coates is an environmental attorney, and for the past 3 years, she has represented the Department of Defense Regional Environmental Coordinator Program for the Army, covering 22 Northeastern and Midwestern states. Prior to joining the Army, she served as Deputy Secretary for Delaware's Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control. She calls Wilmington, Delaware home, but watches birds everywhere she travels.
Good afternoon. My name is Kara Coates, and if you haven't already, I would strongly encourage you to take the 25 minutes to enjoy the full-length pre-recorded presentation on the Department of Defense Regional Environmental Coordinator, or REC, program. This way you can familiarize yourself with how the DoD REC program can empower natural resource managers to achieve their installation's natural resource mission in concert with the installation's training or production mission. The DoD REC program and this presentation is a collaborative effort between the Department of Defense, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force in order to protect species and the DoD mission at the same time. The presentation provides several examples of successful state and DoD partnership models that have led to the case studies highlighted on this summary slide. First, the vessel speed reduction for marine mammal protection out in California, the sage-grouse habitat protection in the West, and the harbor seal migration tracking within the Chesapeake Bay. And I think you'll enjoy those 3 case studies. In addition to that partnership work, the Department of Defense REC program also aggressively tracks state legislation that has the potential to negatively impact an installation. Then we work with installations to determine the level of impact and then engage with the state legislators on behalf of the Department of Defense with an integrated DoD position. It really is a pleasure to be with you today, and I look forward to additional dialogue and questions during the live component of the program.
All right, so hang on a second. Let me get my handy dandy. Okay, our next presentation is from Sean Nelson. Sean Nelson is the NEPA program manager for the Utah Army National Guard. His responsibilities include management of the NEPA process of Utah Army National Guard projects and training. Sean served as the Utah Army National Guard liaison to American Indian tribes in Utah for 15 years and coordinated regularly with tribal governments on behalf of the Utah Army National Guard Adjutant General. So With no further ado, Sean's presentation summary.
My name's Sean Nelson, and I'm with the Utah Army National Guard. In this presentation, I'll discuss the success that we've had within our tribal consultation program through our partnership with Hill Air Force Base, Dugway Proving Ground, and Tooele Army Depot. While the collaborative effort was initially implemented between Hill and Dugway, the Utah National Guard has been a partner since 2010. A partnership among installations within a state or region will ensure a much more effective and meaningful tribal consultation program.
All right, our next presentation is, hang on a second, from Tom Wolforth of Alaska Army National Guard. He has worked as the Cultural Resource Manager for over the last decade. His first dig was in 1975 in Arkansas, and since then he has worked in the Midwest US, Peru, Hawaii, often in lava tubes, and in remote villages in Alaska.
We live in the Anthropocene, when and where human and environmental activity is entangled in ways that profoundly impact each other. Our ways of studying this intimate mixing has yet to catch up with this blending. For the most part, we continue to work within our fortified professional boundaries. Oddly, this new virtual world of conferences is providing an opportunity for us to leap across those boundaries with ease. Just last week, I attended the annual State Archaeology Conference in Alaska. It was free for me and for anyone in the entire world to attend. No need to be a society member. We now have new, efficient, and inexpensive opportunities to expand our knowledge and our networks. It's a pleasure for me to spend time together with colleagues in the natural sciences and tribal governments today. I hope that you will seek out cultural and tribal gatherings on the web that welcome your participation. My talk today is an example of how a project has benefited from reaching out and listening to folks from beyond the archaeology world.
Okay, our next presentation, I hope you were able to view our double presentation on traditional cultural properties. Representing Texas Military Department, we have myself, Kristen Mountjoy, the Cultural Resources Manager since 2005 at Texas Military Department, and our Principal Investigator for our Camp Maxey TCP study, Sheila Bird. Sheila is a member of the United Ketua Band of Cherokee Indians in Oklahoma. She belongs to the Paint Clan and is a descendant of the Ketua Nighthawks. A former TIPO, she is the owner and principal consultant of Ketua Nighthawk LLC. From Arizona Army National Guard, we are pleased to be joined by Shelby Manny, the Senior Cultural Resource Manager and Tribal Liaison, and Terry Majewski, the Arizona Army National Guard's Contracted Tribal Consultation and Public Outreach Program Lead and Executive Vice President of Statistical Research Incorporated. Texas Military Department and Arizona Army National Guard, along with their tribal partners, shared lessons learned related to natural resource considerations and traditional cultural property studies. In these two presentations, we discussed the integration of tribal cultural specialists as important members of the environmental team, bringing a wealth of knowledge and experience to land management. Installations and agencies can benefit by increasing communication and awareness of Indigenous perspectives on natural resources for both traditional cultural property and natural resource data collection. Installations and agencies can recognize the value in working closely with experienced tribal cultural specialists and reaching out to non-tribal professionals with strong experience in working with tribal nations to help when there is a need. They can increase opportunities for natural resource programs to work with cultural resource staff in relevant issues with tribal partners. And finally, a focus on collaborative community-based research is important. Our Arizona Army National Guard used this term to describe a respectful and inclusive approach to working with tribal experts to protect and manage resources successfully. Thank you for the opportunity to share our experiences. In our next presentation from the Idaho Army National Guard, We have Charlie Bond, who served as the Conservation Branch Manager for the Idaho Army National Guard for 11 years. He is responsible for the statewide environmental planning efforts, as well as managing all natural and cultural resources on lands used or administered by the Idaho National Guard. Along with his colleague, Jake Frulinger, who is the Cultural Resource Manager and Tribal Liaison for the Idaho National Guard and Idaho Office of Emergency Management. He has been working in cultural resource management and tribal relations approximately 25 years. That was a great presentation. Okay, next we have Holly Houghton with her presentation on wildland fire. Holly Houghton has served as a Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Mescalero Apache tribe since 2003. She has worked with many military installations and facilities on improving consultation processes.
Holly Houghton here. A presentation I did on Native American Indian tribes and fire management was shown today, and I'm going to go over some of the key points from it. Fire was and is important to Native people. It cleans up old and adds new life. It is a part of life. Ancestors used fire as a tool, and that is why it is important to consult with them regarding fire management. Such consultation can be beneficial to both tribes and land management agencies. Fire impacts archaeological sites, as shown in this picture, but tribes are not only interested in archaeological sites, but rather the whole landscape. Fire can have positive and negative effects, such as with plants tribes utilize. Burning an area can bring back the native vegetation, but prescribed fire could take away a plant right when it is ready to be harvested. Thus, establishing relationships with tribes you consult with before you have to can be beneficial. Tribes can provide information on the traditional ecosystem. Management agencies, knowing when a plant is harvested, can aid in their planning of prescribed fire. Knowing a tribe's perspectives and interests on your lands and resources can lead to better management.
Okay, and then our final presentation is from the Arizona Army National Guard again, and this presentation was prepared by Shelby Manny and Terry Majewski, as well as Martha Martinez, the NAGPRA coordinator of the Tribal Historic Preservation Office for the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community, and Carol J. Ellick, the Executive Director of Archaeological and Cultural Heritage Consultants, LLC.
Integrating nature, culture, and outreach, collaboration by sign and design. This project received funding from a DoD Legacy National Public Lands Day grant to prepare 2 related but distinct types of outreach materials for Florence Military Reservation, FMR, in Arizona, and we are grateful for DoD support. There are 2 products: interpretive signs to replace existing signs, and a coloring and activity book for 8 to 10-year-olds. The first task is to update 9 natural resource signs on environmental awareness kiosks at FMR and create additional signs, around 22 in total. The second task involves creating a coloring and activity book for primary school children attending local area district and tribal schools in the FMR area. Successive collaboration among AZARNG's contractors and tribal representative based on existing relationships of mutual trust and respect. So the success of the intensive collaboration is based on these existing relationships of mutual trust and respect that have been building as a result of AZARNG's tribal consultation program since FFY 16 and 17, and the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community's willingness to allow a representative from their Tribal Historical Preservation Office to join the team. The project is grounded in an inclusive team approach that carries through from start to finish. Creating products for formal or informal learning situations requires specialized skills and knowledge at every stage. When the products are complete, tribal representatives will present the content of the signs to soldiers in an interactive setting and will assist in distribution of the coloring and activity books. It's essential to incorporate tribal perspectives and provide time for review. The tribal team member integrates cultural knowledge into the project for both her community members and non-community members and ensures that the information is accurate and supported by the community. Consultation has been ongoing since project inception, and drafts of signs and the coloring and activity book will also be consulted on formally. It's also essential to develop realistic timelines that provide time for development and review. Collaborative projects are time-intensive, and essential to success is a realistic task schedule that allows adequate time for development, evaluation, review, and multiple levels of consultation. It's also important to ensure that the materials developed are audience appropriate. The materials developed must be audience appropriate. The goal of project is to create suitable outcomes that fit selected audiences and relate to the agency's mission, while ensuring readability and the presentation of content that is culturally accessible to the tribes.
All right, so that concludes the presentations, and we hope if you didn't get a chance to view the full presentations that there will still be an opportunity for some of you to go back and do that, because I think they're just a great collection of perspectives. So now we're very pleased to be joined by Mr. Shane Anton, the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer from the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. And he's going to provide us with sort of a perspective and viewpoint on his experiences working in Arizona and any comments he'd like to offer on our presentations. So thank you, and we look forward to hearing your discussion.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Again, my name is Shane Anton. I'm the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. And I want to say that, we work with all agencies, both state and federal. And so it's always good when they're willing and able to get the tribal perspective. I've worked closely with Shelby, with the Arizona National Guard, as well as Terry Majewski, and they incorporated Martha into the coloring book project that they had. And I was able to view a few of the presentations, and I'm glad that DoD is taking a proactive approach to working with tribes and consulting with them, understanding that relationships have to be built to better access whatever project you want to do going forward. I think Shelby addressed that in her presentation. I saw my good friend Holly Houghton also from Mescalero and working with fire management. And Holly does a great job down there for Mescalero, so I was encouraged to see her. I see her at a lot of the same meetings. So in viewing all of them, I think one of the major themes that I saw was that the Native perspective can be valuable and much appreciated. And that if we work together, even though we may have disagreements about certain things, and if we have a knowledge of one another, we can get to a greater place of compromise that works for both, and that some of the things are protected. Early in my career, we used to rarely deal with the military in any sense, and if it does, they were in a defensive mode. They were afraid we were going to ask for too much to be done, that our requests would be something that they weren't allowed to do. And I think throughout the years, as we met over and over again to meet with them, to have these perspectives, I think they understood our point of view, and we certainly had a greater appreciation for their point of view. You know, because a lot of these are training facilities. We work with Barry M. Goldwater here in Arizona. We're out there quite a bit. There's a lot of cultural sites that we visit, and they allow us to do when they're not doing maneuvers, but they also inform us of what is done and how things are done. And through those collaborations, since they're a air-based installation, they're close to the Tohono Nation, so a lot of their aircraft were creating sonic booms for members in the nation. And so that became an issue that they discussed and worked on and was able to mitigate. So just again, my thoughts are just that it's good that this is taking place and that DOD is working on it, and that we certainly want to be a partner in all these consultations going forward to better protect the cultural resources as well as the environmental resources. And I think that's about summarize what I have to say.
Excellent. Thank you. We appreciate you participating. One thing that anybody that has worked with tribal historic preservation officers knows is they are always very busy and have a lot of agencies putting in requests for their time. So we appreciate you taking the time to spend it with us. So with that, I think if anybody wants to submit any questions or present any questions, Zoe is going to be kind of helping manage that, and we can go from there.
And Kristen, I don't have anything in the chat yet.
Okay.
So if you had some canned questions you want to get started with. Then
Yeah, we have a few questions that, as discussants, that I think some of us put forth. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll start with a question for Kara, who represented the DoD Regional Environmental Group. And I'm going to go with, so REC appears to be focused on natural resource issues. Is there a cultural component to the program? If so, would there be any percent that would be culturally driven?
So that's an interesting question. The DoD Regional Environmental Coordinator Program has kind of two main components. One, the first of which is to monitor state environmental and energy regulation. So there's a little bit of an overlap sometimes with cultural issues that we'll see coming through, but it's mainly looking at enforcement issues with state environmental agencies. The other component that we have is natural resource oriented conservation partnerships. And that's a natural connection with some of the cultural overlay, but we don't have a huge cultural focus in the work that we do, but we certainly do track like SHPO issues and state related legislation that might impact cultural resources. Over.
All right, and then I'm going to kind of move through the questions we had kind of going by in our presentation order, but some of these, if folks feel like they want to jump in and make a comment from our presenters, please feel free to raise your hand or start commenting, I believe. So I have a question for the tribal consultation presentation for Sean. How did the Utah coordinated concept of joint consultation sort of really take off, and how do you approach the executing funds on that?
All right,
and
Kristen,
rotate.
can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Can't get the video to work for some reason. Essentially, we reached out to the other installations in our state through our existing networks, whether it's through SHPO or through a local archaeological organization, a state archaeological organization. But we figured out who to talk to, and while I can't take credit for building those relationships, I owe a debt of gratitude to Hill Air Force Base in Dugway for really building the base upon which our partnership rests. So in terms of, what was the second part of your question? Was it funding?
So the second part of my question was more was related to funding, and what would happen, you know, if an installation that is supposed to be the proponent for that particular consultation year can't execute funds. I know that in the state guard system, we've had it where there's regional groups of guard states that do consultations, and sometimes because of either hurricanes or issues with their contracting, they can't get a consultation in place. Is there safeguards for that in your system, or have you had that problem even?
So in terms of funding, that's one of the greatest advantages to this kind of an arrangement, because here we have 4 installations who are sharing not only funding resources, but time and personnel to execute these consultation meetings that we do annually. And so, for example, if there is a shortfall with one installation, usually one or more of the other installations can kind of cover down and fund those meetings. We do a big joint meeting every year, once a year in April in Utah, and you know, while funding, sorry about that, while funding is certainly a benefit of our partnership, ultimately the biggest benefit is ensuring that we're level on our messaging, and you know, that we don't fall into a situation where maybe a tribe is saying, well, this installation is planning forest kochia on their installation, but you guys aren't, or vice versa, or whatever it is. You know, I'm not just working with cultural resource managers and tribal consultations installations. I'm working with, and my colleagues in the Utah National Guard are working with their natural resource managers and other program managers. So really, it's beneficial to everybody.
That's great. I think that's a good point to make, that environmental programs, your natural people at least should have some place at the table when consultation is going on, because so many of those resources are combined. So I have a question for Tom from Alaska Guard, and I loved your presentation. I liked the idea of creative solutions, but what are your thoughts about the riskiness of that when you find a solution that maybe isn't embedded in the formality of legal regulatory rules? And in particular, I know with cultural issues, you want to be careful, because Holly knows this from some of our consultations. You know, we know that they can trust the existing Texas Military Command and what we're doing, but you want to have something with a legal formality associated with it, whether it be a document or an activity that is funded via a regulatory rule, to make sure that things happen that need to happen. So I hope that question makes sense. But I love creative solutions, but sometimes they also are risky because they're not tied to legal drivers or legal processes. So what are your thoughts on that, Tom?
Thanks a lot. I really like that question. In fact, that goes to the crux of the matter that I'm trying to address here. So legally risky is can go in a lot of different directions, but let me just start by saying this bomb, drop this bomb. Alaska, the state of Alaska does not recognize tribal sovereignty. And that's a legal risky thing, first of all. And that seems to change with every governor that comes and goes. And the last previous governor did recognize that sovereignty and got some things on paper, like you say, a foundation, but the current governor does not. So even though it's on paper, the entire state acts as if the tribal groups, governments don't have sovereignty. So I guess what I've learned from living in Alaska is the laws may not be as good as the paper that they're written on. So what I did as I got deeper and deeper into this thing, I realized that, you know, consultation with tribal governments, which is part of my job as a cultural resource manager and one-time tribal liaison for the Alaska Guard, was the easy part. That kind of engagement was encouraging, stimulating. I learned a lot. I think I was able to share a lot. But I needed to open up my consultation to the state government staff members who the law in the state says, troopers, you have to do this, and coroner, you have to do this, and epidemiologists, you have to do this, and you got to do these permits. And those are the people that I actually got out of my own comfort zone and went knocking on doors, literally knocking on doors. You know, got meetings pre-COVID, sat down in their offices, had some coffee. And boy, I tell you what, as soon as we had a comfort level, as they started to understand where I was coming from and what I was wanting to do, they let their hair down. And they expressed their lamentations for the laws that they were subjected to in this regard. And boy, did I learn a lot from that. And, you know, I learned about some stories in their closets that I'm not going to share. Just like I respect my tribal friends, I'm going to respect my state staff friends and not go there, if you know what I mean. So that goes in a variety of different directions, oddly enough. So that's the legally risky aspect is fascinating. And I think we say that, you say that, I say that as bureaucrats. And I imagine that most of the people listening to this work for a state government scenario or work for a private consulting group that has to abide by these state and federal laws. And oh, by the way, I talk to a lot of federal agencies too. And they all go, yeah, Tom, this is a problem. None of us can solve it. None of us, it's not in our mission. It's our laws don't address it. Our regulations were built years and years ago, prior to this climate change phenomenon where burials come eroding out of the river. So I want to anticipate your next question, which I saw that you wrote down, and that was, how does doesn't NAGPRA protect it, and can't they do a job? And the answer to that is they don't. They absolutely don't. Not for the particular part that I'm working on, and that is eroding cemeteries in rural Alaska. And these cemeteries were built when the Alaska Natives settled down. They were very nomadic prior to that. But when they settled down on the rivers and shorelines 150 years ago, plus or minus, all of a sudden they started, their burials settled down in those locations as well. And those are the burials that are coming out now 150 years later, or even just a few decades later, that are washing out. And NAGPRA doesn't deal with modern cemeteries. NAGPRA deals with the inadvertent finds from archaeological finds and prehistoric and those kinds of things. So there's this, NAGPRA stops somewhere along the march of time, and state, oddly enough, not even state, but local law picks up cemeteries. So there's this weird gap between the federal oversight ending somewhere in a fuzzy land, we don't know where, in the 1800s, and then state law, or excuse me, not even state law, but local law takes over on how cemeteries are cared for and used, and where the layout is, and all that kind of stuff. So the state's like not even involved. So it's not like I'm trying to get around laws or get around the state, but by taking this deep dive into this law, I learned a lot about this local law, which was kind of none of my colleagues were aware of. And if you don't mind me rambling one more time, I looked into the state law, and it says there's two groups that in the state that monitor what the local folks do, and the local folks are just supposed to give a map of the layout and once in a while report in what's going on. So I went to talk to those state monitoring people too, and both of those people didn't even realize those laws existed. They didn't even know, because nobody reports in. And one of them's the Superior Court. I actually talked to the director of the Superior Court. I was talking to Big Cheese Lawyers, and we both kind of had a laugh at that. They go, well, I didn't know we were supposed to be monitoring that. So this circles back around to your legally risky. What I found out was it was legally clunky and legally troublesome. And the law, when it did show up on this matter, wasn't designed to help anybody. So that's where I'm going. And real quick, while I still have you all on this, the model I think that I've learned the best, it's going to have the best opportunity here, is our friends here that have search and rescue dogs. They're volunteers, they're 501c folks. We have avalanches around here all the time and other matters that people get in trouble here in the summer and the winter. And the troopers, man, they call, Batman. They put out the call for Batman, but it's not Batman, it's dog people. And those folks come running. They drop everything. They're volunteers. They have these dogs that are trained to sniff out folks, and they do a wonderful job. So that's what I think that's my model is a not-for-profit rescue team that would be, instead of dog people, might even include dog folks, by the way. We know dogs can sniff out cadavers. But archaeologists, historians, a whole slew of other people that will come and be involved, and it will be not legally risky, and they'll be actually working in tandem with all the other folks that are on the paperwork that are on the laws. So that's the big thing that didn't come up in my slideshow, because I was trying to focus and encourage my colleagues in the natural resources to bust out of your stovepipes and think about all the other people that are involved, and think, put yourself in their shoes and what do they do, find out what they do. It's not just what's on paper, but how real life people implement those things, in the hardships and the struggles that they have. So thanks for letting me ramble on for a little bit. I love that question, and I'd be happy to take some more about that as well.
Okay, great. So we're going to just try to go quickly through the sort of ones that we developed amongst ourselves. I'm going to amend the TCP question a little bit and kind of throw it over to my colleague Sheila. And I was kind of curious, Sheila, we talked a lot about this, and Holly can actually weigh in too, even though she wasn't directly in the TCP presentation, but she's participated in our TCPs. What are concerns and issues, like whether it's traditional cultural properties or any kind of cultural survey of tribal resources? You want to make sure you have, whether it's a firm that's experienced or actually working directly with tribal entities, whether they're businesses that are doing heritage work, or whether they're through the historic preservation offices. What have you seen that's been successful for the agencies you work with on doing these TCP surveys? Sometimes you're hired through a company, sometimes we reach out directly to you, and agencies able to directly bring you on board through various mechanisms. So, and how do you, I guess I just kind of want your general experiences on and thoughts on that, if any of the tribal representatives want to weigh in. So Sheila, I'll start with you and let you kind of elaborate a little bit if I'm making any sense.
Hey Sheila, was that to Sheila, Kristen?
Yeah, that was
Sheila's
to Sheila.
on.
She's on
Sheila's
mute right
on.
now. Yeah, we can.
Myself, I can't get. I don't know if it's better, but comments and looking, I still can't question, and I'm about that. And everything was broke, but he response nag and I did it 3 times, and that's why it's had to log me back in, because this keep me out. No challenges have. Would love to the question chat that in the response from travel bursts. I put it in the chat. Response. I really, it's broken up.
Yeah,
Again.
sorry, Sheila, you're coming.
You
in
are
like
breaking up a little bit.
Shoot.
So if you could type an answer, that would be awesome. And then Holly, do you want to respond at all about, you have done a lot of TCP and cultural work on sites, just what you found in working with different agencies on what works if you're there. And Martha and Shane, if you'd like to weigh in, feel free to as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. And I'll even say today I was happy I got an email from somebody we consult with, and they had received money to do a ethnographic study, and they were doing exactly what we would like. They were asking, is there a certain company, you know, that we've worked with before, or numerous ones that we felt worked really well with tribes. They can't necessarily guarantee that's the one that'll get the contract, but they are reaching out to us first and foremost to see which ones seem to work best with tribes. And it does take experience to work with tribes. You know, some agencies, when we first consult with them, they have a lot of questions. And, you know, it's understandable because they care about the resource and want to know what they should do. But with tribes, you need to listen, not so much as ask, or to be a lot more general in your questioning, like, you know, what do you think about this area? You know, not rather like, well, which plant here is this? When do you harvest it? And how do you do this? You know, you just have to go gradual and, as I said, listen a lot. And that information will come out once a trust and relationship is developed. But it's not really good to just have real aggressive questioning on it. So was there a little bit more you were asking again?
That's good. I mean, I've got another question for you in a minute or two. So we've got some questions for you on your fire. And Martha and Shane, if you guys want to add anything, please do. Or Carol and Terry, if you want to add anything and Shelby on your experiences.
Kristen, sorry, I was just going to give you a time check. We're almost right at time. We're about 15 minutes out. Sorry, excuse me. 15 minutes, and then we have that 10-minute window after. So still got lots of time.
I'll jump in, Kristen. Holly's right, and just in the sense of what we want, you know, as the other gentleman mentioned, like a lot of times people don't know the laws, or they're obscure, or they don't go around them. So, you know, Holly's right in asking the tribe, but what is it you want? What do you want to see? A lot of times we're also fed information that isn't always accurate from people before, saying, you know, the Army doesn't do this, or they won't do that, or they won't listen to you. And so a lot of that is just hearsay. And so again, there's the importance for actually getting to have the relationship building prior to projects being started. We have a monthly meeting of, we call it the 4 Southern Tribes Cultural Resource Working Group meeting. It's held on the 3rd Friday of every month. And Shelby and Terry are regular attendees to that. They give us updates on what's going on. And that gives us the opportunity to ask them questions, and they will tell us, well, we never thought of that, or that's a good question, or we can do a site visit. It's formal but informal. And again, we get to know them. And so that's the crux of everything, is relationship building. And then getting to know that, we let them know that a lot of the stuff they're asking us is emotional, is based on tradition and things that we shouldn't break. There's cultural protocol that's significant to it. And so they're never going to know that unless they get to know us, and not just everything be project based and then they come to us. So that's something to consider.
That's great. That's good words of wisdom there. So I'm going to move, I don't know, I think Charlie, and I don't know if Jake's there. I'm going to just jump, since we are kind of getting close on time. I want to get to Holly's questions. So we had a question that was from Tom, and it was NHPA and Executive Order 13175 requires that consultation takes place for certain reasons in certain ways. Archaeologists and those that conduct Section 106 actions are familiar with these practices, but how do natural resources staff get exposed to the consultation requirements? Is there some ways to get natural resource professionals more involved in the practice of engagement? And Holly, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that in terms of how that works with you as you engage with installations and even other agencies on wildland fire issues.
Well, I would hope that the tribal liaison for your department or cultural resource person would invite their other resource management people to meetings that they have with tribes, or as they work more with tribes, will learn that they are interested in other things just than the cultural resources. That to them, the cultural resources include the landscape and the plants and the care of them and the management of fire and range improvement. All those things have an impact. So it's just kind of again, a relationship that develops. But I mean, just like this is a meeting on fish and wildlife. And so we are talking about the cultural resource and tribal that's a starting point to help to open those doors that to the other type of resource management that tribes are interested in, that and to communicate with them.
That's a good point. All right, let's see. And then there was another question. Where would natural resource staff in the military have a chance to interact with tribal environmental staff in a relaxed way to build relationships? I mean, I know we invite everyone to our consultations because that's a process where we hope everybody will get to know each other and visit training sites, or we'll visit training sites and include as many people as we can. And that's my perspective from an agency. And if anybody wants to add to that one.
Kristen, I can add to that. Again, everyone, my name is Martha Martinez. I'm the NAC coordinator for the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. So as stated earlier from Shane, you can check to see if tribes have monthly meeting with other tribes, or just seeing what their schedule is. We do a cultural sensitivity training. So oftentimes when people hear about that, they want to take the training just to learn a little bit more. Any questions that they may have, those are things just to show the effort that's being built into putting these relationships together, asking questions, and even if it may not come out right to us, at least you're asking, and to us that means a lot, and you're learning from those experiences and not maybe calling the ancestors a particular word we don't agree with and viewing them in a different way. And we understand that's not similar for everybody, but learning is a key part of that, and applying that knowledge when and wherever you can. And if it's just, again, before we had everything, we would have lunch with these people and they would come like was stated earlier, Terry and Shelby would sit into our 4 Tribes meeting, and they didn't have a presentation, but they were more than welcome to sit there and listen to the presentations. And after, we would share lunch together with everybody that was there. So those are some of the ways that you can, and if possible, to outreach to tribes where it's not really a formal setting, but you're able to have those conversations.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes what happens is, cultural offices get scared to have maybe, whether it's training site people or other environmental folks from their office interact. They're afraid they're going to say the wrong thing, but sometimes you have to bring everybody together and let it happen, and everything will get corrected, hopefully, and then that's what it's about, is kind of learning. So that's really good advice and suggestions. So that's great. I'm going to go back here. I think we actually had a question in the chat. Did I see a question in the chat? Okay. Janet from Arizona Guard asks, so how or what do natural resource managers need to know about NAGPRA and other laws and creative solutions? Ooh, that's a long one that we might not have time for, but if any of the tribal participants want to weigh in on what they think a natural resource staff person, probably their most critical takeaways on sort of NAGPRA in the cultural laws that are kind of drive cultural programs.
I can try that one too as well. So again, it's down to asking the tribe. So like with NAGPRA, it's even for us as tribes, it's difficult, to kind of understand it, in that, but that's what we spend a lot of our time on. So we get a lot of working with different people and lawyers. How does this work? And you won't get the same answer every time. So it's just kind of dependent upon. And then for the environmental or just kind of natural resources, that's our prehistoric way of, coping. We use the resources to our advantage just to stay alive, but we never overburdened it. And so that's kind of the thing now, is like, I use the example of, if I'm a young man and I'm going to get married, I know I'm going to need a house for me and my family. But in today's world, they'll build a complex, they'll build 20 houses and then sell them as they're needed. So there's a difference of opinion on how those resources are needed. And even in that sense, like when people know that I'm married and I'm going to have a house, they'll come together as a community and help me build it, because that's what you do. And then as things go forward, I do the same. So it's those different ways of how we treat the resources. So even, as a prehistoric or people, we never envisioned a world that would overuse the resources. So for us, it's hard to say, what do you guys think about this and how do you protect it? And we never had to protect it. It was always abundant, or that's not always the case, but I'm saying in certain situations, there were things that we haven't dealt with. So we're kind of going through that in the same sense of saying, gosh, I never knew we would run out of water, that kind of thing. So, if we give you that perspective, does that help? Well, yeah, we need to conserve it. So let's work together and figure out how that can be done. So again, just it's asking the right questions and sitting down and figuring out the things you want to do for that. But the laws, ask the Native people what laws are important to you, which ones do you see? And, they're changing all the time. So for us, we recently tried to say, we have a legislative office within the tribe, and they deal, and we have lobbyists, and they deal with people here in Arizona that are creating the laws. So there's a lot of movement that we have to be well aware of who's in power in Washington. If it's one group or the other, they lean certain ways, and we have to figure out how those thoughts and efforts are going to affect our cultural resources, and how that, what we need to do to make sure that our legislative representatives also are caring about what we're doing or what we want them to do.
So I don't know, is anybody from Idaho Guard in the session that was part of the presentation? Because I had a question on that. I just was kind of curious in the terms of Kevin, are you there? Okay, Kevin's there. In terms of your caves and the fact that there's sometimes cultural resources, what has been the perspective on the tribes on the natural resource teams needing to go in there and do their surveys? And a lot of times, for us in Texas, caves are places where there's cemeteries, and so we need to be careful and cautious. And I'm just wondering if there's how you guys have handled that piece of it with the cultural and the natural issues surrounding those.
This is Kevin. Jake's in my office with me, so I'll let him answer that.
Hey, Kristen, how's it going? Can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. So to address your question, yes, all the tribes we work with are definitely have concerns on natural and cultural resources. And as these presentations have shown, and then some of the tribal members talking, a lot of the tribes we work with, there's no differentiation between the natural and the cultural. They take more of a holistic approach. So we make a point in our partnerships with tribes to make sure they are well informed on everything we do on the cultural resources side and the natural resources side. And when we do go into caves, specifically for white nose syndrome or other things that Kevin works on as our Batman, we definitely make sure they are tracking that and aware of it. And one of the things we've done, and I know there was talk earlier, is partnerships, is we've really focused on trying to develop, again, the cliche term, but partnerships with our tribes, and inviting them and their staff out for any cultural resource related stuff, natural resource related stuff. And we kind of do that beyond just the typical government agency. I think only reaches out to tribes on project specific. So we've done a number of things over the years, just honestly to open our arms and invite them out, and then also go to their reservations and do these presentations in front of their councils. And we also bring our cultural staff and our natural staff at times, depending on if the tribes have time, to do presentations on what we do. Again, we try not just to focus on the councils, but we also focus on, Kevin has a counterpart with the various tribes we work with. So we try to put them in touch, same with our GIS managers and tribal GIS managers. And we've taken some folks over before and just sat down and done workshops where we exchange information for that or to them and vice versa. So we learn from each other. So long story short, I keep saying the term partnership, but for us, that's been a huge thing, is not necessarily even project specific. I mean, we talk projects occasionally, but the day-to-day stuff is primarily focused on just even staff level to staff level relationships.
Awesome. It's great. Good stuff to hear. So I think, Zoe, are we at the end here of our time? We're wrapping it up.
We have 2 minutes, and then we have a 10-minute buffer after that.
Okay. So does any, I guess I'm going to open it up if there's, please, anybody who's been kind of sitting here and listening to the discussion, if there's anything, put a question in the chat and let us know. If not, I think I'll just kind of go through, and if we can real quick, everybody, just if there's any comments you want to make through the speakers, we'll start with Kara, and we'll just maybe do like a minute each if you want to wind up and make any comments. If not, that's okay too. I just want to make sure we get as maximum discussion.
I'll just have a shout out to my other co-presenters. It's been really a great experience to learn about a lot of the tribal interactions and the cultural partnerships that are ongoing, and it's just really great to be part of this this illustrious panel. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Kara. We know you got put in our panel, and so you got taken for a ride with the cultural folks. Sean, do you want to add any?
Nope, I don't have anything to add today.
All right. Well, thank you. And Tom?
Just real quick, we talked about partnerships and consultation, but I would like to mention the word friendship. You'll find that the more you do this, the wider your friendship circle will be. Thanks a lot.
That's Tom. He's always got the gems of statements. Sheila, do you want to add anything? I know you're having some troubles with your mic, but if we can try, or if you just want to chat, put something in the chat, that's fine.
I can try. Is it coming through? Is it coming?
Looks like she's having some rain, maybe some weather that's affecting.
Yeah,
Sheila,
I think.
we'd love to hear from you if you just want to get in the chat with your last
Yeah.
thoughts.
And then Shelby, do you want to jump in too with you, and Shelby or Terry, if you guys want to make any closing remarks?
Hi, this is Shelby. I just wanted to thank everyone and Janet Johnson for wrangling me and my team to present on this. I'm excited about the potential to integrate natural resources and natural resource management and forestry into the cultural program, because from my experience, I have the tribes generally are very interested in the natural environment and how we're managing it. And there's been some great insight into things that we didn't know before about protocols and standard operating procedures of how to handle, say like damaged squirrel and other types of things. So not only just to protect the cultural resources as they are usually defined, but for many tribes, in my experience, they consider, plants, animals, and the natural landscape, be it a stream or other feature, as a cultural resource. And oftentimes we forget that. So it's a natural integration for me. That's all I have to say. I don't know, Terry, if you have anything to add, or Martha or Carol.
This is Terry. I wanted to thank all of our collaborators on both of these projects, on the TCP project and on the coloring and activity book and signage project. I think it's very difficult to weigh the benefits. You get a really great product, but the intangible benefits of this are the friendships and the amount that each side learns, and really the hope that many more projects can develop this way. So thank you. Carol or Martha? There's Carol.
I just want to say thank you. It's been an honor to be a part of this panel and to learn some from each of the presenters.
Okay, great. And Idaho, do we want to add anything quick? Right, I don't know if we're going to get cut off or not. We're going to try not to, but thank you, Idaho.
Yeah, this is Jake. I just want to say, Tom, good points, and some other good points is these definitely need to be looked at as not just the basic relationship, but honestly friendship. And one of the nice things about the Guard is we're not going to have our leadership change every year or two, like some of the big Army installations. So those friendships are definitely something that has carried over for us. And for me personally, yeah, I absolutely, that's the favorite part of my job. And then some is the tribal relationships as opposed to even the archaeology part. So anyway, thank you for everyone. And thanks for this opportunity at NMFWA.
Yep, thanks.
All right, Holly, I have to second what Jake says. I love my job the most because I enjoy working with all the tribal colleagues I get to work with. So I'm gonna let you have your last words here in thoughts.
Well, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this session. I hope that people do get to watch all of them since they're pre-recorded. It looks like there was so much on the agenda. It'd be hard, so I was happy to see that it'll still be available, they said, for maybe even 6 months. So that's great. And maybe you want to show it to your other resource managers at home as well, So also, I just want to say one other thing, when you do reach out to a tribe, you may not hear something. That doesn't mean they aren't interested. We are very busy. So keep trying, especially in these times with the COVID, it's very hard because a lot of, we have been in our office for a long time, but I know a lot are working at home or only part-time. And so during this time, it's really hard to try to get a hold of people as well, but just keep doing it. Try email, try calling, try letter. But I would say more the calling is kind of the best connection to try to move forward with the tribe. Thank you all.
Yes, and we've gone pre-COVID. A lot of times we would even sometimes we'd make a couple of meetings in Oklahoma. A lot of our tribes are in Oklahoma, and we would just kind of do drive-bys to see if we could at least just drop off materials, and if somebody was around, maybe introduce ourselves, and that can be a helpful mechanism too. Or like Martha said, finding meetings that are ongoing and finding out if there's an opportunity to come and observe a meeting, or if it's open to the public, to introduce yourself. So I think those are great things. And if there's anything else that anybody else wants to add, Arizona, do you want to add anything else about your with the Public Lands Day? And if not, we'll probably close this out. And I hope we get an opportunity to do this again, and maybe in person when COVID finally is controlled. We would love to be able to come back and share even more experiences from other agencies and perspectives.
Kristen, I was just going to share a couple musings from the chat that I think were really great. Sharon Moore said she really enjoyed the session. Hope it will continue going forward. She does both cultural and natural resources for her command, so she found this really helpful. Overall, seeing a lot of people that want to see this more. And I think, I don't know, Janet, I'm going to put you on the spot. This has kind of been your baby. Do you want to talk a little bit about your vision for this type of session in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I can. I've got time. Sure. No, I really, it's something that was an epiphany as I started through my career, and not understanding, not knowing that, in my mind as a natural resource manager, as a wildlife biologist, I mean, duh, of course it makes sense now, but I think back and it wasn't at the top of my mind that cultural resources are natural resources. It should be integrated into everything we do as biologists, as natural resource managers, we work for the same thing, this conservation of landscapes and functionality and, that type of thing. So it makes perfect sense. And I just wasn't seeing it enough being shared at these types of events, at these workshops. We separate ourselves for the archaeologists over here and, wildlife people over there. And it's the tribes that are saying, no, these are all one. So I think we have a lot of lessons to learn. And the traditional ecological knowledge that has been lost, it hasn't been lost to them, but it's been lost to us. And I think, as all history, we need to remember that history. We need to learn from it. We need to build it, and the relationship building. Oh, I love it. Thank you, Holly, listening, and Shane, and Martha, stop, listen, be persistent, and go in with it wholeheartedly, with an open mind. So yeah, if you guys have ideas, anyone who has ideas, please bring them up in the chat to me, to Michael, Wright, our program manager, our workshop coordinator. We would love to see more of this in the future, and we'd love to see more cultural integrated. So that's all. That's my soapbox. Thank you so much, you guys, for making this happen. Really, really appreciate it and very excited.
Yes.
Thanks.
Well, I mean, yeah, thank you, Janet, and Michelle Richards too, because this kind of was something we were tossing around a little bit, and Janet opened the door for it, and we kind of ran with it. So we might have stumbled a little bit, but I hope we all got through it, and please, and we would love to be a part of it in the future. So
great. All right, people will start getting booted here in about 30 seconds, but that was great.
Okay,
great.
Thanks,
session.
guys. Please, other agencies, reach out to us, or follow up on the contact information if you'd like to think about doing this next year together.
Thank you, everyone.